The GameCube is one of my favorite consoles of all time. I think it is the peak for Nintendo, and while I did have one and did have a lot of games for it, I actually didn't have most of the games that Nintendo has put onto the GameCube service for the Nintendo Switch 2 online. And I feel like I've played more GameCube games than I have Switch games on my Switch 2 since purchasing one. At the end of last month, just in time for the holiday season, they released Luigi's Mansion, one of the release titles for the console that, for one reason or another, I never actually had as a kid. So I had to try it. It was Halloween after all. So does the game hold up, or is it a nightmare best left in the past? Let's talk about it. You know what shouldn't scare you? Liking the video, leaving a comment, subscribing to the channel. The most notable thing to me about Luigi's Mansion is it's a very Nintendo approach to the Resident Evil formula. Luigi's in a mansion, there's a lot of locked doors, there's a lot of ghosts to fight, and to traverse you need to figure out puzzles, collect keys. There are so many similarities to the original Resident Evil here. I think this really works for the game. If you're a kid, you don't necessarily know. If you are older and have experienced those games, it's a nice little homage to the greats of the genre, and you can tell that for whatever reason, when Nintendo decided to do a total tone shift in their game to this more spooky, I wouldn't call this a horror game, but it's definitely darker than a Mario game. They wanted to do it with respect to the genre. The respect is nice, but unfortunately, it doesn't quite measure up to the masterful layout and level design of those original Resident Evil games. I found the mansion layout just a little too linear. It felt like any key that you found it in a room with the door that key opened in it. There wasn't much backtracking and exploration, and because of that, when there is backtracking, when you find a key to a room that's not in your immediate vicinity, you have to do so much backtracking because the last 5 keys you found were all for the 5 doors leading into each room. So the mansion doesn't really spread out in an even way. You mostly go down one path for a while, hit a dead end, and then have to completely backtrack to then start on a new path. This makes, especially the end game, feel like a bit of a slog because you are taking way too long to backtrack. I actually like this about the game. When you clear out ghosts from a room, they don't come back. But then that also means when you're backtracking, you're just walking through empty rooms. There's no real reason to explore a room that you've already been in if you know you've cleared it. The main focus of the narrative is that Luigi is trying to get Mario back. He's been sucked into a painting by King Boo in this mansion that has materialized out of nowhere. And in order to do that, you're going to have to get through a number of different ghosts. In addition to the standard ghosts, each room in the mansion has a named ghost that usually has some kind of puzzle or gimmick that you need to figure out in order to catch them. For the most part, I found these, maybe clever is too strong of a word, but they mixed up the approach enough that it never got too boring or repetitive, even though for the most part you are doing the same thing over and over. But the different ways in which you had to interact with the ghosts or the rooms that they were in at least kept it fresh and interesting throughout the whole game's playtime. One aspect, though, where the game really does show its age is in its combat. I found the combat to be a little clunky, and I don't know if this is a symptom of the emulation that's going on the Switch 2, or if this was a problem on the original GameCube as well. But it just felt like sometimes things wouldn't work. You'd hit a ghost with a flashlight, they'd get stunned, but by the time you pulled out your vacuum to get them, they'd disappear. As you go through the game, you get elements that you can use, water, fire, and ice, and those interact with ghosts in a special way. And unfortunately, this is a symptom of the Nintendo Switch not having analog shoulder buttons. On the GameCube controller, you could either hold the button down somewhat to spray, or if you pushed it all the way in, you would kind of fire a projectile. This was necessary for some of the bosses or encounters, and very frustrating because essentially on the Switch you'd have to hold down both the ZL and the L button, but one after the other, and so it was just a very clunky control solution. Sometimes too, I felt like when trying to turn Luigi while using his vacuum, he just would stop. You would hit a limit when he was facing up that you just couldn't turn him anymore in one direction or the other until you stopped using the vacuum, rearranged him with the left stick, and then you could kind of maneuver him. I don't know why. That just seems like something that we could have figured out, but it definitely hindered a lot of the combat. In other cases too, there would be scenarios where you needed to use your vacuum to grab certain objects that were flying around and then launch them at ghosts. This also could be very frustrating where you'd have to get way too close before the vacuum would actually grab the item, and sometimes that would cause me to run into the item and take damage from it. Then trying to aim before you launched it is insanely frustrating. They don't give you any indication of where it's going to go. You have to eyeball where Luigi's pointing, where the ghost is moving, you're moving, and you have this weird camera angle. So that led to a lot of frustration. I don't like having to repeat the same thing over and over in a boss fight when I know what I need to do, but it feels like either the mechanics of the game, or in this case the camera angles and all that, are getting in my way from doing it. There's no fun in repeating the same thing, knowing you know what to do, and just feeling like the game isn't letting you do it. In addition to the named character ghosts, there are also 50 boos hiding around the house that you can find. They were pretty floaty and frustrating to collect. This was by design, I believe. They're able to go between the rooms. They're one of the only ghosts who can do this. And they would just escape from your vacuum way too easily. There was a couple times where it's like you grab the boo for 1 second, you do like 10 damage to him, but he's got 300 health, and then he hops into the next room. So then you walk to the next room, same thing, do 10 more damage. He goes back into the room you were in before, into a different room. And it's just not fun to keep chasing these guys around. It doesn't add anything to make me transition from room to room while trying to chase down the ghost. It just makes it tedious. One thing I have noticed when playing these GameCube games, specifically Chibi Robo, but I did also notice it in this game, is that in this era, Nintendo really enjoyed weird little sound effects. I don't know. The main tune that Luigi is kind of whistling as he walks around the mansion is pretty great and pretty catchy. There are some other sound effects, like when you collect an item, the sound that plays is awful. It's so low res and not exciting, especially when you compare it to the sounds that you hear when Mario collects a star in Super Mario Galaxy or Sunshine or whatever. It's just so insulting to Luigi. Overall, I really enjoyed my time with Luigi's Mansion. It's simple, straightforward, but it's also fun. It doesn't overstay its welcome, and it mixes things up enough as you go through it that it doesn't get too repetitive. The setting is cool, it's a nice homage to the Resident Evil games, and it's just a nice little change of pace for what you expect when you play a Mario game. What do you think? Is Luigi's Mansion the best in the series? Was it a mistake to make it a launch title for the GameCube? Probably. Let me know in the comments down below. If you liked the video, consider hitting the like button or subscribing to the channel, maybe even becoming a member so that I can have money and not turn into a ghost, if you know what I'm saying. What GameCube games do you want to see brought to the system next? For me, I'd love it if they brought back Star Fox Adventure. That game's an absolute classic. And I will see you all with the next video.